For 30 years, Maria walked the same hallway, greeted the same faces, and carried the same folder under her arm. She believed routine was safety, that stability meant happiness. But one Tuesday morning, the manager's words cut through her world like a cold wind. "We have to let you go," he said with eyes that avoided hers. The walls seemed to close in as Maria struggled to breathe. She carried a box filled with 3 decades of memories, leaving behind the only professional life she had ever known. Outside, the sun still shone, but it felt like a stranger's day. Each step away from the building was heavy with fear and disbelief. Maria thought of bills, of her empty home, of nights that now had no direction. At 55, she wondered if life had already passed her by. At home, silence wrapped around her like a blanket she didn't ask for. The ticking clock grew louder, each second pressing into her thoughts. She stared at old photographs, her younger self smiling with certainty she no longer felt. The smell of dust filled the room, a reminder of years spent working instead of living. The question echoed relentlessly, what now? Maria's phone buzzed with messages of sympathy, but none eased the ache in her chest. Words like "you'll be fine" felt hollow, distant. She closed her eyes, replaying the manager's voice again and again. Doubt whispered that she was too old, too late, too tired to start anew. Hope seemed like a language she no longer understood. That night, she sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like fading stars. She wanted to believe in something greater, something waiting ahead. But fear pressed harder than faith. Sleep came slowly, filled with restless dreams of doors closing. Somewhere inside her, though, a quiet ember remained. It waited, fragile but alive, for a spark to come. The next morning, Maria stared at her reflection in the mirror. The lines on her face told a story of years, but also of strength she had forgotten. She whispered to herself words she didn't quite believe. "This isn't the end." Her voice trembled, but it was a beginning. Beneath the pain, there was still a pulse of possibility. And so, her journey into the unknown began with a heavy heart. The road ahead was uncertain, but something inside whispered that change was coming. She didn't know when or how, but life was about to surprise her. One ending was simply the first page of a new beginning. The days stretched endlessly, each one looking the same. Maria woke without purpose, her alarm clock silent for the first time in decades. She wandered through her house, touching furniture that seemed unfamiliar. Without work, time felt like a wide, empty desert. Every morning echoed with loneliness. She tried reading old books, but the words slipped past her eyes. Television shows filled the silence, but left her hollow. The refrigerator door opened and closed too often, meals made out of boredom rather than hunger. Even the walls seemed to sigh, holding her in their quiet cage. Austin felt distant, though it surrounded her. Her children called from other cities, offering comfort through a screen. Their voices were warm, but when the calls ended, silence fell harder. Friends still working had little time to visit. Maria sat at her kitchen table, sipping coffee that grew cold. Loneliness was not just absence, it was a weight. One evening, she stood at her back door, staring into the small garden. The air carried the scent of herbs she once planted but had long forgotten. The rosemary and thyme grew wild, reaching for light. Something stirred in her heart, a whisper she couldn't yet name. It was faint, but it was there. Still, doubt clung to her like a shadow. She wondered if her best days were already gone, locked away in offices and forgotten meetings. Nights were restless, filled with worries about bills and age. She prayed quietly, asking for strength, for guidance. She hoped for a sign that change was possible. Each morning she promised herself she would try something new, but fear slowed her steps. She folded laundry, washed dishes, and watched the world move outside her window. The days felt safe, but safety now tasted bitter. Deep inside, she longed for something more. And then, one afternoon, the unexpected arrived at her door. A neighbor knocked, carrying an empty plate and a hopeful smile. That moment, simple and ordinary, would plant the seed of transformation. Maria's neighbor, Clara, asked shyly, "Would you mind making something for me? I've always heard you cook well." The request startled Maria. Cooking had once been a joy, but years of work had buried it under routine. Still, she agreed. That night, she entered her kitchen with hesitant steps, The scent of onions sizzling in olive oil filled the air. She chopped herbs, their fragrance awakening forgotten memories. Her hands moved awkwardly at first, then found rhythm in the familiar dance of pots and pans. The sound of simmering broth was like music she hadn't heard in years. Cooking felt alive again. When Clara tasted the dish, her eyes widened with delight. "Maria, this is amazing," she said, her voice carrying genuine warmth. Maria's heart fluttered, surprised by how much those words meant. A spark lit inside her, one she thought had faded forever. Hope began to stir. The next day, Clara returned with another request. Soon, other neighbors heard about Maria's cooking. Plates came back empty, replaced by smiles and compliments. Each dish carried not just flavor, but love, and Maria felt it too. Her kitchen became a small stage of joy. In those moments, Maria remembered her mother teaching her family recipes. She saw herself as a child again, standing on a stool to stir a pot. The warmth of those memories blended with the present. Cooking was no longer just survival, it was connection. Late at night, she sat at her kitchen table, the aroma of spices still lingering in the air. She whispered, "Maybe this is something." It wasn't a plan yet, but it was more than emptiness. For the first time in weeks, she smiled before falling asleep, and deep within, she sensed that this rediscovered gift would carry her further than she could imagine. It was more than food, it was the beginning of a new chapter. Cooking soon became Maria's daily ritual. She tried old recipes, the kind her mother and grandmother once made. The kitchen filled with aromas of garlic, chili, and cilantro, blending into a melody of heritage. Each dish carried a memory, each bite a story. The past felt alive again. She remembered holidays with long tables of laughter, when food united hearts. Those images filled her with both longing and strength. She realized she hadn't lost everything. Memories were treasures still with her. Through cooking, she felt closer to her family, closer to her roots. Her notebook filled with scribbles of recipes, each one carrying a special touch. Sometimes she adjusted ingredients, adding her own style. Each change reflected not just flavor, but courage to create. The act of writing felt like building something new. It was no longer just memory, it was vision. When she shared her dishes with neighbors, they often asked, "How did you make this?" Maria's smile grew wider each time. Sharing knowledge gave her joy, as if teaching others gave her story new life. Food was no longer just nourishment, it was a language of hope. One evening, Clara said, "You could sell this, you know." The words lingered in Maria's mind long after Clara left. Could cooking be more than a pastime? Could it be a door to a new beginning? The idea scared her, but it also thrilled her. That night, Maria sat by her window again, but this time her thoughts were brighter. The city lights seemed less distant, more like sparks of possibility. She whispered to herself, "Why not?" The question opened her heart to dreams she had never dared to hold. And so, the flavors of memory became the seeds of a vision that, though fragile, was ready to grow. Word spread quickly among her neighbors. Soon, Maria found herself cooking for small gatherings. The compliments came not just for the taste, but for the comfort her meals brought. People lingered, smiling longer, sharing stories. Her food was becoming more than flavor, it was connection. One evening, a group of friends surprised her with flowers and a card. Inside were words she never expected. "We believe in you. You should open your own business." Her heart pounded, torn between excitement and disbelief. She had never seen herself as an entrepreneur, but now the thought refused to leave. She shared her doubts with Clara, who answered simply, "Maria, your food has soul. People need that." The words wrapped around her like a warm embrace. Maria had always given to others, but now others were giving her belief. Hope grew stronger with each encouragement. Still, fear whispered at night. She wondered if people would laugh at her, if she was too old to start again. Bills piled on the counter, reminding her of reality. Yet, each morning in the kitchen reminded her of possibility. Fear was heavy, but hope was rising. She began researching late into the night, scrolling through food blogs and videos. She read stories of people who had started over, some younger, some older. Each story fed her courage. She thought, if they can, maybe I can too. Courage stirred, fragile but alive. When a neighbor offered to pay for a batch of tamales, Maria hesitated. Then she said yes. Money exchanged hands, not just as payment, but as proof that her gift had value, that her time was not wasted. It was a small step, but a powerful one. That night, she wrote in her notebook, "This is real. I can do this." And with those words, the seed of a dream began to take root. Maria sat at her kitchen table, staring at her notebook filled with recipes and scribbles. The voices of her neighbors echoed in her mind, urging her to dream bigger. The idea of selling food tugged at her heart with both excitement and fear. Could she turn this into something real? The question refused to leave her thoughts. She began to imagine what it would feel like to serve her food to strangers. The picture of smiling faces holding plates warmed her spirit, yet doubt crept in like a shadow, reminding her of her age and her limited savings. Courage and fear wrestled in her chest. Still, curiosity whispered, what if? Late at night, Maria searched online for possibilities. She discovered food trucks, colorful and full of life, parked on Austin streets. The images sparked something in her: freedom, creativity, and connection. A truck could move, adapt, and carry her dream anywhere. The vision grew brighter with each picture she saw. She imagined painting her truck with warm colors, serving dishes inspired by her family roots. She pictured the aroma filling the air, drawing people closer. Her heart raced at the thought of laughter and conversations around her food. It wasn't just a business, it was a way to share herself. That realization gave her strength. The next day, Maria confided in Clara about her dream. Clara's eyes lit up with excitement and belief. A food truck suits you perfectly, she said with certainty. The words planted courage deeper inside Maria's soul. For the first time, the dream seemed less like fantasy and more like a plan. Still, obstacles loomed large. Trucks were expensive, and starting a business meant risks. Maria wrote down every challenge she could think of, filling pages with worries. But alongside each problem, she scribbled a possible solution. She was learning to face fear with preparation. Hope began to outweigh doubt. That night, Maria closed her notebook and placed her hand over it. She whispered to herself, "This is the beginning." Her heart trembled, but it was steady. The seed of a bold idea had been planted, and nothing could take it away. The next week, Maria decided to act. She visited food truck parks around Austin, observing carefully. She noticed how owners greeted customers, how menus were displayed, and how laughter flowed around the tables. Every detail became a lesson, every smile a spark of motivation. She felt both nervous and inspired. At home, she started budgeting. She wrote down her savings and calculated expenses with precision. The numbers scared her. Money was tight, and risks were real. But Maria reminded herself that dreams required sacrifice. She promised to live simply, cutting out what she didn't need. It was a test of discipline and resilience. She also signed up for free online business workshops. Sitting in front of her computer, notebook open, she took notes like a student again. Words like marketing, permits, and branding filled the page. It felt overwhelming, but learning made her stronger. Each class built her confidence, brick by brick. Her evenings were filled with cooking experiments. She tested recipes, adjusting flavors until they were perfect. She invited neighbors to taste and give feedback. Their smiles encouraged her, their suggestions guided her. Maria realized she wasn't building this dream alone. Her community was with her. She also began researching affordable trucks. Many seemed out of reach, their prices towering above her budget. But she didn't give up. She searched tirelessly, believing that somewhere, a humble truck was waiting for her. Each no she encountered only sharpened her determination. She was learning patience. When fatigue set in, Maria reminded herself of her purpose. She wasn't chasing wealth, she was chasing life itself. She wanted to share love through food, to prove that it was never too late to start again. That thought renewed her spirit each time doubt appeared. Step by step, Maria was moving forward. The road was steep, but she was climbing with courage. For the first time in years, she felt alive, walking towards something that truly belonged to her. As Maria dug deeper, the challenges became more real. Paperwork for permits and licenses felt endless, each form another mountain to climb. Officials spoke with words she didn't fully understand, and bureaucracy tested her patience. She often left offices with headaches, doubting her ability to succeed. Money was another heavy burden. Her savings seemed to shrink with every calculation. Equipment, ingredients, and truck repairs all demanded funds she didn't have. Nights were filled with restless thoughts about bills and deadlines. The weight pressed hard, threatening to crush her fragile hope. Still, she refused to surrender. Friends sometimes questioned her decision. "Are you sure this is wise at your age?" they asked, their tone half concerned, half doubt. Each question cut deep, echoing her own fears, but Maria learned to smile politely, keeping her vision close to her heart. She chose to listen to belief rather than doubt. Even the truck search tested her. Many vehicles were rusted, broken, or far beyond her reach. She walked through dusty lots, hearing salesmen promise more than they delivered. At times, disappointment felt unbearable. But Maria reminded herself that every no brought her closer to the right yes. Her body also protested. Long days of planning, cooking, and researching left her exhausted. Some mornings, she woke with aches that reminded her of her age. But each time she stepped into the kitchen, the aromas of spices lifted her spirit. Passion was her medicine, and resilience her cure. One evening, she sat in her garden, staring at the herbs under the stars. Tears filled her eyes, a mix of fatigue and determination. She whispered, "I can do this," though her voice trembled. Hope flickered, fragile but alive. She clung to that flame, refusing to let darkness win. The journey was harder than she imagined, but Maria was learning. Obstacles were not walls, they were teachers. With each challenge, she grew stronger, more determined, more alive. One morning, Maria received a call from a friend of Clara's. "I know someone selling an old food truck," the voice said. Her heart raced as she wrote down the address. That afternoon, she went to see it, her hands trembling with nervous excitement. The sight nearly took her breath away. The truck was old and worn, its paint faded, its tires tired. Yet, Maria saw beyond the rust and scratches. She saw a possibility. She imagined it painted with colors, filled with aromas of her dishes, surrounded by smiling faces. Her heart whispered, "This is it." But the price was still a challenge. The owner, an older man with kind eyes, listened to her story. He nodded slowly, as if he understood her struggle. After a long pause, he said, "I'll lower the price for you. I believe in second chances." Tears filled Maria's eyes. It wasn't just a transaction, it was a gift of trust. With shaking hands, she signed the papers. Fear thundered in her chest, but so did courage. This was her leap into the unknown, her bold risk. She drove the truck home slowly, every mile a mix of terror and exhilaration. It was old, imperfect, but it was hers. Neighbors cheered when they saw the truck arrive. Children clapped, adults offered to help. Maria's driveway turned into a gathering place of laughter and hope. For the first time, her dream had wheels, standing tall despite its scars. She felt proud, though the road ahead was still long. That night, Maria placed her hand on the truck's metal side. "You and I will start over together," she whispered. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, reflecting her hope. The fear of failure remained, but courage had found a stronger voice. She felt unstoppable. The courage to risk had transformed her. She was no longer just dreaming, she was building. The truck was proof that new beginnings were real. Weeks of preparation led to the big day. Maria scrubbed and painted the truck until it shone with vibrant colors. She tested her recipes again and again, adjusting every flavor. She created a menu filled with love, tacos, tamales, and soups from her heritage. Each dish was a piece of her story, ready to be shared. The morning of the opening, she woke before sunrise. Her hands trembled as she chopped vegetables, her heart racing with nerves. She packed the truck with ingredients, double-checking every detail. Clara stood by her side, offering calm words of encouragement. Together, they drove to the food truck park. When Maria parked, the other trucks surrounded her like giants. Their menus were polished, their lines already forming. Doubt clawed at her, whispering that she didn't belong. But then she looked at her truck, simple yet warm, and reminded herself of her purpose. She wasn't here to compete, she was here to share. The first customer approached hesitantly. Maria's smile wavered, but her hands worked steadily. She served a steaming plate of tacos, her heart pounding as the customer took a bite. A pause followed, then a wide smile spread across his face. "This is amazing," he said. Relief washed over her. Words spread quickly. More customers arrived. Drawn by the aroma and the joy Maria poured into every dish, laughter and chatter filled the air, blending with music and footsteps. For hours, Maria worked tirelessly, her truck alive with energy. Fear melted into determination, replaced by pure gratitude. By the end of the day, her food was gone. She leaned against the truck, exhausted but glowing with pride. Clara hugged her tightly, whispering, "You did it." Tears streamed down Maria's cheeks, but they were tears of triumph. She had faced fear and turned it into courage. That, as the sun set, Maria looked at her empty pots and the smiling faces around her. It wasn't just about food, it was about life, about second chances. The grand opening was only the beginning of something extraordinary. The first weeks brought both joy and mistakes. Maria often forgot small details like napkins or change for customers. She sometimes burned rice while rushing, her nerves racing faster than her hands. Yet each mistake became a lesson, shaping her skills with patience. Failure turned into practice, and practice into progress. She learned to listen carefully to customers. Some asked for spicier flavors, others for vegetarian options. Each suggestion opened new doors, showing her how to adapt and grow. Maria realized that food was not just about her taste, it was about connection. Listening became her greatest tool. Long hours tested her strength. From early mornings at markets to late nights cleaning the truck, exhaustion was constant. Yet every tired muscle reminded her she was building something real. Pain was no longer emptiness, it was proof of effort. Her body hurt, but her spirits soared higher. There were slow days, too, times when customers were few and doubts returned. Maria stared at uneaten food, wondering if she had made the wrong choice. But then, one loyal customer would appear, smiling with gratitude. Those small moments reignited her belief, keeping her flame alive. She also discovered the beauty of teamwork. Friends volunteered to help during busy hours, turning her truck into a joyful hub. Their laughter filled the air, blending with aromas of sizzling dishes. Maria realized she didn't need to carry everything alone. Support made the journey brighter. Each week, she improved her menu, her service, and her confidence. She learned how to manage money carefully, balancing every dollar with wisdom. Slowly, her savings began to grow again. Small victories built a foundation stronger than fear. She felt herself changing, inside and out. And with each challenge overcome, Maria felt closer to her dream. She was no longer just cooking, she was creating a life filled with purpose and resilience. Soon, her food truck became a beloved spot in Austin. Families gathered around, couples laughed, and children licked sauce from their fingers. Maria's dishes carried warmth, and people could feel it. The truck was no longer just hers, it belonged to everyone who shared a meal. Word spread beyond her neighborhood. Bloggers and food lovers came to taste her recipes. Some took photos, posting them online with glowing reviews. Maria never imagined her name on social media, but now her food was reaching people she had never met. Her heart overflowed with gratitude. Local musicians began playing near her truck, creating an atmosphere of celebration. Maria served food to the rhythm of guitars and drums, her spirit dancing with every note. The truck became more than a business, it became a gathering place, alive with music, flavor, and joy. Customers often shared their stories while waiting for meals. They spoke of dreams, struggles, and second chances. Maria listened with empathy, realizing that her food was more than sustenance. It was comfort, encouragement, and hope. Each story reminded her of her own journey. One evening, a young woman said softly, "Your story inspires me. I thought it was too late for me, but you proved otherwise." Maria felt tears rise, touched deeply by the words. She never expected her life to become an example for others. Hope had found a way to multiply. Her community supported her with loyalty and kindness. They returned week after week, bringing friends and family. Maria's truck was painted with bright murals by local artists, turning it into a landmark of love. Every brushstroke carried the spirit of unity and resilience. Maria realized that she had not only built a business, she had built a community, and in their embrace, she discovered strength far greater than her own. As weeks turned into months, Maria began to dream even bigger. She imagined expanding her menu, perhaps even hiring staff. Ideas of catering events or teaching cooking classes danced in her mind. The possibilities stretched wide before her, like an open horizon. Hope was no longer fragile, it was strong and steady. She received an invitation to join a local food festival. The thought terrified her. So many trucks, so many people. But Clara reminded her, "This is your chance to shine." Maria accepted, her heart pounding with both fear and excitement. Preparation began, filling her days with purpose. At the festival, crowds swarmed around colorful trucks. Maria stood nervously inside hers, praying someone would stop by. Then, the first group approached. Drawn by the aroma of her tamales, she greeted them warmly, her hands steady despite her trembling heart. Soon, a line began to form. Customers cheered as they tasted her dishes, praising the rich flavors. Some even asked if she had a restaurant. Maria smiled, humbled and amazed. The festival ended with her truck nearly sold out. It was more than success, it was proof that her dream had wings. That night, She walked through the festival grounds after closing. Lights twinkled above, music still echoing in the distance. She felt small among the crowd, yet powerful within her spirit. The woman who once feared endings was now living a bold beginning. She had grown beyond her fears. Back at home, Maria updated her notebook with new goals. She wrote about catering, cooking classes, and community events. The pages filled quickly, as if her hand could barely keep up with her heart. Possibilities poured out like a river. She realized she was no longer surviving, she was thriving. And with each horizon she reached, Maria saw that her journey was far from over. It was only expanding, carrying her toward a brighter tomorrow. The success of the truck was only part of the story. The greatest change was happening inside Maria. She no longer saw herself as the woman defined by loss. Instead, she saw resilience, courage, and strength staring back at her in the mirror. The lines on her face told a new story, one of triumph. Each challenge she had overcome became a badge of honor. Every mistake, every sleepless night, had shaped her into someone new. She realized that transformation was not sudden, but gradual. It came through persistence, through small victories that built a foundation of confidence. Maria began speaking with others about her journey. She encouraged women who felt stuck, reminding them it was never too late. Her words carried weight because they came from lived experience. People listened, not just to her advice, but to her heart. She was becoming a quiet leader. Even her children noticed the change. On video calls, they saw her glowing with purpose. "Mom, you look younger," her daughter said one evening. Maria laughed, realizing that passion had given her back a spark she thought was gone. Her family admired her courage. Drawing strength from her story, she felt gratitude for every struggle that had brought her here. Without loss, she would not have discovered her gift. Without fear, she would not have discovered her courage. Life's storms had cleared the path for her new beginning. She no longer resented them. She embraced them. Each morning, she opened her truck with joy rather than nerves. Cooking was no longer just a task, it was an expression of love, of identity. Her truck had become her canvas, and every meal a painting. The transformation was not just professional, it was deeply personal. Maria knew she had found something greater than success. She had found herself again, and in doing so, she had discovered a purpose worth living for. 1 year after losing her job, Maria stood proudly by her food truck. The journey had been filled with fear, struggle, and doubt, but it had also been filled with laughter, friendship, and triumph. She had built something from nothing, and in doing so, rebuilt herself. Her story was proof that endings could become beginnings. On the anniversary of her opening, customers gathered to celebrate. They brought flowers, cards, and gratitude. Children drew pictures of her truck. Adults shared stories of how her food had touched them. Maria served meals with tears in her eyes. Overwhelmed by the love surrounding her, she raised a toast of sparkling cider, her voice steady and strong. "This dream began when I thought life was over, but today, I stand here to tell you it is never too late." The crowd cheered, their voices echoing through the park. Maria smiled, her heart bursting with pride. Her truck had become more than a business. It was a symbol of hope, resilience, and courage. It reminded everyone that life was not measured by age, but by the will to begin again. Maria felt honored to be the keeper of that message. She carried it with grace. As the sun set, she closed her truck for the night. She looked at the fading sky, filled with colors of orange and gold. Each hue reminded her of the beauty of change. She whispered softly, "Thank you," her words carried by the evening breeze. Gratitude filled her heart completely. Walking home, Maria felt light, as if the world had opened wide before her. She no longer feared the unknown, for she had learned to embrace it. Each step was a promise, each breath a celebration of life. She was free, stronger than ever before. Maria's story had only just begun. Her food truck was a dream fulfilled, but her spirit knew there were more horizons ahead. She walked into the night with courage, carrying the truth forever. It is never too late.